As with many gamers, I too fall victim to the unabashed ego trip that is getting good at games. But with that being said, how often do we forget such items are quite honestly recreational activities with the primary intent of having fun? I would wager quite often, actually. And in my mind, there is nothing that is less fun or enjoyable, or even tolerable, than the proverbial hitting the wall. That is to say, when a game's adversity, or in some cases its proclivity for "but thou must," becomes too much to handle, that is when a player says, "Screw this," and drops the game entirely, or even the series entirely. Don't even try to deny it, we all feel the same way here. What I have personally never understood is when a game developer looks into setting their standard difficulty for a game, and they do not implicitly make it a fair fight. Often, in their minds, the standard or normal mode places you at no disadvantages, but still gives the enemy clear advantages in their favor, while easy mode is the no advantages, no disadvantages fair fight. For the other difficulties, a very easy mode is when you start getting advantages of your own, while hard mode and above start giving you the disadvantages. Now, I personally have no qualms with using Halo as the case in point here, given Halo is the crown jewel of the Xbox culture. When you play Halo on its normal mode, you have no debuffs, and your NPC allies have no debuffs, but that doesn't detract from the fact that enemy units have buffs of their own. And it has always been this way. On normal, you see an uptick of promoted enemies compared to the game's easy mode, as well as boss enemies such as hunters, brute chieftains, sniper jackals, and so on. Note that all of these are the enemies that are armed with one-shot weaponry, the fuel rod guns, the beam rifles, the gravity hammers, the energy swords, and very rarely, your allies, if they happen to even be on the map with you, do not have one-shot weapons of their own. Now, occasionally they will be given Spartan lasers or sniper rifles on very specific sections of missions, though these weapons are also objectively inferior to their Covenant counterparts, again making the disparity even worse. Truly, even on normal mode, you are on your own, and that has always been the problem I have with that series. But I digress. Let's instead make this a productive convo and talk about what I feel defines a fair difficulty. Because it really shouldn't be that difficult, pardon the pun, to figure out. If you were to think of a standard normal curve, woo statistics, then 50% of people should have no difficulty getting to the end of the game, and 50% of people need to get good. Does that hold up in the real world though? Given how things are right now, no way in hell. According to achievement statistics for some of the games that I play, about 11% of people beat NFS Payback, just under 8% beat Yakuza Like a Dragon, 6% beat Journey to the Savage Planet, and get this, less than 2% have beaten the grand finale of The Crew 2. And though I cannot claim the exact reasons for why that is, I would argue that in any of these games, you will eventually hit some kind of wall, and getting over that wall will determine whether or not you beat the game outright. For example, with NFS Payback, the Mitko Vasilev drag race was one such wall because quick time events. In Like a Dragon, the major boss fight of Chapter 14 is where many of the players said, "Screw this, I'm out." Savage Planet had some truly ridiculous platforming sections in order to get the needed fuel canisters for you to return home. And as for The Crew 2, well, slogging through the many stunt series of the game, you know, the ones in red, will absolutely wreck your sanity. Like, I get it, totally and completely. And though I have cleared a lot of games in my time, there is no denying how many of these games have made me shout all kinds of expletives and to ask, why the hell is the game made this way? How is this supposed to be fun? That in itself is what tends to make these little victories rather hollow. Yet recently, there was actually one game that I played which, to my surprise, did its standard difficulty so well, I don't think I even got upset at the game a single time during my playthrough. And of course, that game is none other than Celeste. So let's talk about what this game does differently and what gives it its gameplay balance. The object of the game is incredibly simple. You are a girl named Madeline, oddly enough, and your goal is to climb Celeste Mountain. This is accomplished with just 3 action buttons: jump, dash, and grab. Every level is designed like a classic Mega Man level. You load into what is essentially a one-screen puzzle, getting from one side of the screen to the other. And if you can do this, it takes you to the next screen to clear the next one-screen puzzle. The game is divided into chapters where each chapter adds a new mechanic, some combination of these 3 buttons. For example, in most cases you are limited to 1 air dash before falling to the ground, but in some areas, items exist on screen to replenish that air dash multiple times before landing. Other items exist in later chapters to propel you at high speed in a single direction, or sometimes multiple directions, and you are tasked with dashing out of them at precision timing to land in a very specific area. If you fail a maneuver and die, you will respawn at the entrance of that screen. If that screen has multiple entrances, it defaults to the last entrance you used. This alone is an amazing mechanic because it means if you have cleared a side area and die on your way up to the next main area, you don't lose progress on that screen. And more games could learn a thing or two just from this, because checkpoints in games like Halo and Tomb Raider are often so poorly optimized that they make these games unplayable at times. On that note, we should talk a little more about that death and respawn mechanic of Celeste. When you die, there is a mere 1 second delay before you respawn, so that the level can refresh itself. And this is good because this is a game where you will die a lot. But because the game is a series of one-screen puzzles and gives you essentially a checkpoint every 30 seconds, you never have to worry about load times, ever. One of the biggest optimization issues of most games is that when you fail and have to restart, even from a checkpoint, there can be anywhere from a 10-second to 30-second to even a full minute delay. And all of this realistically comes from the amount of redraw those games need to do, simply because they send you back 5 to 10 minutes between each section of the game. For example, in Tomb Raider, there are only a handful of respawn areas in the shipwrecked beach. It can take up to 10 minutes to get from your beachfront respawn point to the grotto, which is the highest point on the map. Now let's say that you die, fall damage, or whatever. You don't respawn at the grotto because the grotto's respawn checkpoint only activates if you start from there. So you are instead sent back to the other respawn checkpoint all the way at the beachfront, which is 10 minutes away. And to add insult to injury, the game now has to redraw that entire area because it just finished drawing the grotto for you before you died. So your reload time is now doubled. The easiest way to not have this happen in the first place is, simply enough, having more checkpoints. Have a checkpoint every 30 to 60 seconds, especially in longer levels, so that when the player dies, not only do they not have to redo a lot of lost progress, but they don't have to sit through 20 combined minutes of loading screens in a 2-hour play session. Now, I will admit this is less possible in certain genres, racing games for example. You know I love racing games, but some races are 5 to 10 minutes in length, and if you fail them, you do have to start from the beginning of that race. There is no getting around that. But for something like a platformer or especially a first-person shooter, there is absolutely no excuse. That really is all the background stuff that games should be doing to help the player along, but what about the actual gameplay mechanics? The answer to that is better prompting of the player, and this is also something that Celeste does incredibly well. When you fail an area repeatedly and then you take a step back and look at it more closely, there is always a route through it, even if you don't yet know the gameplay mechanics to leverage that route. Like, this game uses strawberries as collectibles. Early on, you will see some strawberries have wings and that they fly away when you get close to them. Take a step back and you'll realize they actually fly away when you use any dash mechanic. So now you know to traverse that area by relying instead on grabs and proceeding more slowly. But then, in the late game, you get an upgraded dash, and this opens up a new mechanic where you can either go slow like before, or you can simply double dash and collect the strawberry before it has a chance to fly away. To me, that is brilliant game design. The behaviors of the environment and objects on screen are telegraphed in such a way that the player always knows what to try next. Most games do not give you that same luxury, and the devs know it. Yakuza Like a Dragon was a prime example of this. That boss fight I told you about, it features a major character from the prior Yakuza games, and it gives him an actual gameplay mechanic where he refuses to hit women. That is questionable from a story perspective, since Like a Dragon does put the female fighters on your team front and center, and from a gameplay perspective, it is the scummiest bullshit play ever put into a video game. End of story. What do I mean by that? If you go into the fight with a team of all male fighters, this boss will attack each one 1 to 2 times per turn, no exceptions. This is a turn-based JRPG, by the way. Swap to have 2 men and 2 women, however, and watch as this character attacks the men 1 to 2 times per turn, and skips a turn for each of the women. There is 0 prompting in the game to specify to the player that this is a gameplay mechanic. None. It requires information that only the developer would know, and at best, seasoned players could make an educated inference on if they played the other 6 games in the series. And while I did beat Like a Dragon, I will probably never play another Yakuza game ever again because the devs have 0 respect for the player, and that is the hard truth. So, to make a long story short, by combining all of these factors, the frequent recording of player progress, the quick reloads, the prompting of gameplay mechanics and so forth, the makers of Celeste really crafted one of the greatest video games of all times in terms of difficulty and player approachability. We could probably call it here, but there is one more thing, and it's probably the best thing that really seals the deal for a game like this. It is that if the game really is too hard for you, the game's assist mode does not penalize you for using it. In Celeste, the assist mode basically is the easy mode of the game. It makes you invulnerable and it gives you unlimited air dashes. With these 2 things, all you have to do is move from A to B to essentially win the game. But if you use assist mode, you can still unlock the achievements for playing the game in the first place. A lot of games will lock out achievements if you play on easy mode. Halo does it. City Skylines does it, if you even care about achievements in that game. Hell, the Mega Man collections themselves do this with their Rookie Hunter mode, and that is on top of ramping up those games' standard difficulties compared to 20 years ago. Yeah, doing those things is straight up unnecessary, and any game dev that does it, please retire immediately, because you are the reason games suck. End of story. So, when I finally sat down to play Celeste, I decided I would play it in a very specific way. For my first playthrough, the full A-side run, I would play it with assist mode off. You heard me. I played it, standard difficulty, where death is inevitable. And you can see that now, on screen. I died almost 1,500 times across all stages. It took about 7 hours, but I managed to collect 80 strawberries, all on my own, using my own skills, and clearing the top of the mountain. I can be proud of that. And now, post-game, you can bet your ass that I am making a new file with assist mode on for collectibles, B-sides, and C-sides. I am just gonna enjoy myself because I freaking earned it. This is going to be my final thoughts on the matter, and then we'll end the video. Not only should a game, any game, be approachable to half the gaming population on its standard difficulty, but once you've beaten it, there should be no penalty for wanting an easy ride thereafter. And to be fair, some other games actually do kinda get it. The Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest surprisingly get it. And that is why they are some of my favorite games. As you level up in the Crew as a series, you gain perk points that improve your skills as a driver. The fact that these perks are stackable allows players at higher levels to have a much easier time in future events than players just starting out. It is the developer's way of saying, get in there, prove your mettle, and when it's over, stick around just to have fun. But oddly enough, a lot of players seem not to understand this for themselves. I have seen so many players complain about the fact that perk points and affixes widen the score margin in something like live summits. You know, the Crew Series weekly tournaments. And I won't lie, it can be intimidating for new players when they see other players who are hundreds or thousands of levels higher than they are scoring max points on every event. But they need to realize, if they push a little bit each day, then one day it is going to be them. I remember when I started out and getting low 70k on every live summit. But these days, I get closer to 110k on every event. And a lot of that is because I stuck with it. Something I would not have done if Ubisoft Ivory Tower had decided instead to make the game more and more daunting with each level up. And that is really where I'm going to leave things today. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, tell your friends, and I will see you in the next video.